this edition of Border Report Live. My name's Rudy Mireles, and I am your host here in Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of deep South Texas. Got an incredible program lined up for you today. Miss Claudia Galan is going to be joining us. She is an immigration attorney that works up both out here in the Rio Grande Valley as well as San Antonio, Texas, to discuss a whole myriad of topics that has to do with, of course, immigration. But as always, we're going to start today with taking a look at what's making news across the border, starting with an update to a story that we actually brought you here first a few months ago. You remember that app we were telling you about, the Ice Block app? You can see video of it there on your screen. Well, Apple has removed it, which from their app store, which in this app, if you didn't know, allows users to track and report the location of immigration and customs enforcement officers and actions. So they have removed it from their app store, and they say, quote, "We created the app store to be a safe and trusted place to discover apps. Based on information we've received from law enforcement about the safety risks associated with IceBlock, we have removed it and similar apps from the App Store." Now, again, they said similar apps because several apps, after we talked about the IceBlock app here on Border Report Live, started popping up wanting to do the same exact thing. Well, this app specifically was created back in April, and again, it allows users to track where ICE officers are and pin their locations. Those people within a 5-mile radius with the app of those pinned officers would receive a notification letting them know that some kind of immigration enforcement action was taking place near their spot. So Fox Business reported that Attorney General Pam Bondi was the one who asked Apple to remove IceBlock from the App Store. Moving on to this next story here, and got an image for you to check that out. So that is fentanyl. We're learning today that in 1 month alone, federal officers in Nogales, Arizona, seized nearly 1 million fentanyl pills. Now, smugglers were bringing the potentially dead blue pills that you see there from Mexico into the United States, stashed in vehicles, hidden in luggage, or strapped to their bodies. The largest known seizure took place on September 19th when CBP officers found dozens of small bundles containing 30 pounds of methamphetamine and nearly 178,000 fentanyl pills. On September 11th, officers found nearly 165,000 pills in a pedestrian's luggage. And a few days earlier, another traveler walked across the Nogales port of entry with 23,000 pills, get this, strapped to their thighs. Fentanyl seizures, just like migrant encounters, have been falling drastically during fiscal year 2025, according to data from CBP. But the Tucson field office, which includes Nogales, has seen fentanyl seizure events steadily rising since May. Coming back here to the Rio Grande Valley for this next story on the list, we have some developing news. Homeland Security Investigations raided a McAllen City Commissioner, and his name is Rodolfo Castillo. That is him there on your screen. Those videos you just saw were of his home, and they also raided a business he's connected to. It's called Oro Ropa Usada on Thursday. It's a used clothing store. They buy and sell used clothes. Agents also arrested his wife yesterday on money laundering and smuggling charges. Now, according to the criminal complaint against her, the commissioner confessed to bribing Mexican law enforcement officers, apparently to make sure that used clothing from his business would be allowed to cross into over the border. The couple are also accused of accepting cash from an undercover agent during a sting operation. The undercover agent reportedly paid them about $20,000 for used clothing. Now, according to the criminal complaint, the company attempted to export the used clothing without filing the proper paperwork. Now, Commissioner Castillo had not been arrested, but his wife may make her initial appearance in federal court today or Monday. And we are learning just before coming on the air that although Commissioner Castillo had not been arrested, that he is making his way to surrender himself at the federal courthouse in McAllen, Texas. Now, Mexico has always been opposed to the importation of used clothing into the country. They say it's to protect its domestic textile and apparel industries from unfair competition and economic harm. It's extremely difficult to get permission from the Mexican government to import that used clothing. As a result, most ropa usada businesses, as we call them down here in the Rio Grande Valley, they operate in this kind of legal gray area, and they are prevalent throughout the entire border. They're frequently targeted by corrupt Mexican law enforcement officers, crooked Mexican customs officials, and people affiliated with Mexican drug cartels. Time now to bring in our South Texas correspondent, Sandra Sanchez, and our guest for today, Miss Claudia Galan, an immigration attorney that works out of both here in the Rio Grande Valley and San Antonio, Texas.
Hi, Ms. Galan. Thanks so much for being with us, and thanks for having us again, Rudy. Want to jump right in. The Associated Press and others are reporting, as you know, after several immigration judges were fired over the summer, that the Trump administration has tapped about 100 Army, Reserve, and National Guard lawyers who on Monday will start training to become immigration judges. Now, you specialize in this field. I've been told that this is a really complex, hard legal subject, immigration. I mean, are these people qualified to jump in as immigration judges? What are your thoughts?
They're not, Sandra. There are concerns that these JAG officers are going to go through a very short training, which is 6 weeks, when regularly immigration judges are required to have 7 years of experience in immigration law. So there are concerns of due process that these JAG officers who are going to become judges temporarily will have the competency level to adjudicate these applications in immigration court.
And are laws in military that these JAG officers currently serve in different from U.S. immigration laws?
Absolutely. There are very different laws. Immigration laws is its own code. There's a code of federal regulations and the Nationality and Immigration Act, which are not used in the training or performance of these JAG officers in military court.
So can you give us some examples? I mean, what kind of learning curve? And you said 7 years, and we're talking 6 weeks. What do you expect might happen? What might fall through the cracks or be difficult for them?
Well, one of the main concerns is the requisite knowledge of the precedent law. How do they apply the laws? Whether they're going to be able to, determine fair and reasonable conclusions and decisions in the adjudication of asylum applications. These are people that are facing deportation, that are facing essentially a permanent situation if they're deported back to their country. So one of the biggest concerns is that they might not be educated or have special or ample knowledge of a particular issue. So as an attorney that regularly represents immigrants in court, my job will be to make sure that I present the law and the arguments for the judges so they have all of it in front of them and they can make a decision.
Now, give us a little history. How many years have you been serving as an immigration attorney? And you have offices here in Edinburgh, which is South Texas, as well as San Antonio, right?
That is correct, Sandra. I have been practicing for 6 years and a half. And prior to becoming a lawyer, I interned for Homeland Security and worked for other lawyers and have about 10 years of experience in the immigration law.
I know that sometimes tax attorneys say it's the hardest field, immigration attorneys say it's the hardest field, but in my experience, those two fields have always risen to the top as far as policies are always changing, and it is a very political kind of a law, correct? So it's not easy to grasp. You mentioned the Immigration and Nationality Act, so many sections to that.
That is correct. And there are a lot of changes under this administration. So as an immigration lawyer and judges have to get up to date with all the changes and policies that are coming out.
So tell us, last time we had you on a few months ago, and you had mentioned that since the Trump administration had come back their second term, that the immigration courts were a lot more electronic, a lot less personal, in-person hearings, and that was affecting your ability to maybe negotiate deals for some of your clients. What is happening now? What's the trend? What's court like?
Well, things have shifted, Sandra, as a matter of fact. As you know, there have been a lot of arrests and detentions outside of court and ICE officers coming into the courthouse. A lot of judges that allowed people to present on WebEx or or virtually are now required to go in person. And this is for the main purpose of getting their case dismissed and then detained in immigration court. So judges that in the past we were able to appear virtually are now requiring to for the applicant, the immigrant, and the lawyer to appear in person, which is the best when you're trying to represent someone in immigration court. The judge is in front of you, opposing counsel or the ICE prosecutor is there present. However, there is a threat that they be deported and detained at the conclusion of their pretrial hearings.
I see what you're saying. I see where legally, it could help their case because you could make these in-person connections. But now we are hearing so many reports of people who go to court and then they're being arrested. Have you personally had any clients be arrested after a hearing or before a hearing?
We've unfortunately, had one situation in a case out of Harlingen. As a matter of fact, the government moved to dismiss the case. We opposed. The judge was in accordance to dismissing the case, and our client was detained. Now we represented her, and obviously we are fighting to get her out of detention. And this is really just to put pressure on people. Detention is a very terrible experience, and most of them don't last there enough to see the conclusion and full adjudication of their case.
So she's detained. She has not been deported, and you're fighting that.
Correct.
We're speaking with Ms. Claudia Galan, an immigration attorney, on pretty much everything under the sun that we can fit into 30 minutes when it comes to immigration law. But stay with us. We're going to continue the conversation after a quick break. Border Report Live is back in 1 minute. Welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. Joining us for today's episode, we have immigration attorney Claudia Galan.
Ms. Galan, we were talking about cases and a client of yours who has been detained. Overall, there has been a slight drop in the number of backlogged cases from a high of 3.6 million to 3.4 million. Are you seeing the cases move through the courts faster now?
Really, the numbers haven't dropped because the cases are moving faster, Sandra, but the numbers have dropped because a lot of these cases were dismissed in court so that ICE can then conduct detentions and put them in a separate or different type of removal proceedings where they wouldn't have access to a court or a judge, which is a credible fear process. If that interview were to be denied, then they will be deported back to their country without having an opportunity to present their full case of asylum in front of a judge. And so that's what we've seen the numbers dropping, because thousands of cases were dismissed by ICE prosecutors, and then those people were put into a different kind of proceedings.
I see. So it's kind of a switch in the numbers. It looks like they're getting rid of cases faster, but they're just altering where those cases are. Like you mentioned, people being detained and deported. What about during this government shutdown? Are the immigration courts still operating as normal? Have you gotten any notifications of cases being, stalled or delayed?
We've had court hearings for people that have been detained. So on October 1st, I had a hearing for my client that was detained that was not canceled. So as of now, everybody that is in detention in removal proceedings, their court hearings will not be canceled.
Why do you think that those are moving forward? When government doesn't have funding right now, do you have a suspicion?
Well, in this situation, because of the due process legality of it, they are detained, their matters are urgent, and because they are detained, their process has to move forward. They cannot be at a standby and being detained. At that point, their detention is illegal. And so it is for this reason that detention or detained dockets are moving forward. I'm assuming that they have some sort of fundings in reserve for these situations.
Yeah, I heard there is funds in reserve and that they are going to take cases by priority. So today there was some reports by Migrant Insider and others that DHS was calling today Freaky Friday raid, and basically telling many children who came unaccompanied, undocumented, ages 14 and under, to self-deport. They were being targeted, basically signing away their rights under the Trafficking Victims Protection Reauthorization Act, or face indefinite detention and transfer to ICE custody when they turn 18. What do you as a lawyer make of that?
This is very concerning, Sandra. I myself represent unaccompanied minors in other proceedings, in court proceedings, and also applications before USCIS. Most of them have relief here in the United States if they have been abandoned, neglected, or abused by one of their parents abroad. Now, the concern is that on this side, they have relief. If they go to detention, then that relief can be obstructed. They will not be able to access it through detention. And right now, the ways that the laws are changing for people that are eligible for a bond, people are not being able to get a bond from judges. That right and authority was stripped away from immigration judges to grant bond. And this is why there's a threat for indefinite or long periods of detention for these minor children. And essentially, they're being forced to move forward with an asylum case. And if that asylum case is denied, they are facing deportation.
And what is happening to these children when they are being held? Are they being held in detention facilities for children? Are they being sent to foster care? What are you finding?
There are centers that are designated for minors and also for families if there is a parent and a minor that are detained at the same time. However, we know that the conditions of these detention centers are not the best. The fact that these children are being separated from their normal environments, it can be very traumatic for them.
Mm-hmm. And apparently, they're being offered a cash payment of $2,500 to self-deport if they refuse. ICE is threatening to go after their parents or family members, anyone living in the United States. Some are calling that blackmail. I mean, what do you make of that kind of tactic toward these children, small children, 14 years old?
That is exactly what it is, because as a child, they obviously feel like they want to protect their parents in a way. So children that are 14 years old or older up to 18, they can make this kind of decisions. And so they are forced to make a decision whether protecting their parents or just, risking a chance of them getting status here in the U.S. Now, as far as the $2,500 payment that they're promising, we know that in the past also, Immigration and ICE offer a $1,000 payment for adults that self-deport. And as of now, there's no data that is showing that those payments have been sent to people that have deported. Most of them have already taken that option. Some people have. So I don't believe that these children will receive that amount of money.
Have you had any adult clients who have self-deported and not received the funds or received the funds?
I haven't had clients that went through this application, which is it was through a CBP-1 application online. But I have clients that ended up being detained and decided to sign their own voluntary departure, or clients that essentially bought a flight ticket back to their home country.
Were they reimbursed for the flights? Because Homeland Security Secretary Noem has been saying for weeks they will be reimbursed once they get to their home country.
There is no knowledge that I have as of now that they have been reimbursed for their funds or that they have actually requested for those funds to be reimbursed.
Yeah, I just wondered how that would work. She and the Trump administration says when they're back, then we will pay them back. But I was very curious what the time frame of that would be. And then the other question I had is how would they go after their parents if these unaccompanied children going back to them have parents here in the United States? Wouldn't U.S. Officials pair them with the parents or not? Why would they still be held as unaccompanied children?
Well, when they come in, Sandra, what happens is if they come in unaccompanied, then they are designated as unaccompanied minors. Most of the times their parents follow them after, or one parent is already here in the U.S. when they enter, and they may be reunited with them or not, depending on the situation. But here, the point that ICE wants to do, or the purpose of this, is to be able to detain the minor and then inquire about the whereabouts of their immigrant parents. And if they are here, then they could also call them in for questioning, or since they're the legal guardian or their parent, they need an adult to show up.
And obviously those adults, if they don't have documentation, would be very scared to come to a court proceeding, right?
Absolutely.
What about, we're hearing there may be some more applications available for DACA. This has been a process that people haven't been allowed to file for a while. Do you have an update on what might be happening with DACA applications?
Yeah, so recently, a few days ago this week, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals issued an order wherein USCIS agreed to reinitiate the adjudication of all the initial applications that have been pending since 2021. Some of my clients applied back in 2021, and we're still waiting to have a decision. However, this proposal from USCIS hasn't been permanent. We're still waiting to hear or get an order issued by Judge Hannon out of the Brownsville Federal Court, which is the initial court that initiated the litigation and the lawsuit this time around. Now, the injunction has been lifted temporarily, and that means that USCIS will re-adjudicate all those initial applications that are pending. There is still opportunity to file new applications for those that don't have DACA yet, but they do meet the requirements.
And are the cases in Judge Hannon's court being delayed any with this government shutdown, or are those going forward? Is that going to affect this at all, do you think?
Well, the government shutdown does essentially affect the federal courts. They are closed at the moment and are not operating because of the lack of funds. Now, we don't know exactly where they're going to reopen, but hopefully once the government reopens, we get a notice or some type of news from that judge.
You see, just talking to you, this is such a complex subject. There's so much that you are knowledgeable about, and we appreciate you taking the time to share this with us. You mentioned you have clients that have filed for DACA, and now they may be eligible to have those cases renewed. So are you optimistic that this is going to go through another time and you may find some relief for them?
Yes, that's the good news. The bad news, Sandra, is that applicants for DACA in Texas will not be able to obtain their work permit. While they will be able to obtain the benefit of deferred action, which is the protection against deportation, they will not be able to have a work permit, which essentially also gives them a social security and a driver's license in Texas.
But in other states, possibly they can. Unfortunately,
yes.
Here, not. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Ms. Galan, for joining us. We are unfortunately out of time. Again, we could talk about this another one of the programs for hours because it's so complex. So we appreciate you spending your Friday afternoon with us. Have a great day.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
That is going to, or rather, it's not going to do it for us, but we're going to take one quick last break. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Border Report Live. Hundreds of federal agents arrested dozens of suspected illegal migrants during a raid on an apartment complex on Chicago's South Side. And News Nation's Allie Bradley was on the scene as it all went down.
We just wrapped up an overnight operation with federal agents and officers as they ascended into Chicago's South Shore neighborhood. It was one of the biggest operations that officials say they've had under Operation Midway Blitz so far, and they had specific targets in mind. Intelligence leading roughly 300 federal agents and officers to this apartment complex, some even rappelling down from Black Hawk helicopters onto the rooftop to help secure the perimeter. They were searching for suspected members of Tren de Aragua, along with other fugitives. The violent Venezuelan gang has been designated as a terrorist organization under President Trump. It's the biggest show of force that we've seen in a single operation, with agencies like Border Patrol, ICE, FBI, and ATF pursuing targets inside the same building. Officers breached at least 3 doors after residents inside refused to open up. Preliminary reports show that roughly 30 illegal immigrants were arrested in the operation. Border Patrol Chief Gregory Bovino, who was running the show, says it was a successful operation.
They trained for this operation for several days, and because of that training and those rehearsals that they did, this operation went very smoothly. They went through that structure, which is a very large structure. You can see it's 5 stories. They went through that structure a lot quicker than I thought, and several apprehensions. It looks like we have a couple of potential targets that we briefed earlier today that we were after. We're glad to be here in Chicago. This is South Chicago. You're going to see some more here in South Chicago. We're going to be coming back here in all areas of Chicago. We're not going anywhere. You're going to see all the Border Patrol agents, all several hundred of us, as well as those allied law enforcement agencies. We're going to be taking it to those violent gang members.
Now, some U.S. citizens were held temporarily as federal agents and officers went through that building and cleared it. Border Patrol is saying it was strictly for their safety. In Chicago, Allie Bradley, News Nation.
Before we go, just wanted to remind you to check out our partners at Political Power Anchor. It's a weekly show tracking the movers, shakers, and rule makers in American politics. You can find more on Political Power Anchor at abc27.com or your local Nexstar station's website. That is going to do it for us today. Have a great weekend.